Board meeting, August 17th. It's 4:01 p.m. and until we have a quorum, this will be an informational meeting. We're awaiting a board member to join. Is that it?
Yep, he's in.
There we are.
There we go.
Okay. We now have a quorum. So, Eliza, let's do roll call. I'm calling this meeting to order, and Eliza, if you could do roll call, please.
Certainly. Katie Fresh.
Hi, the president. President, sorry.
Susan
Waddle.
Susan Earl is absent. Jonathan Nickel.
Present.
Dwayne Romero. And Susie Zimmer.
Here.
Ratified the deal with Warren, and the time is 4:03.
Great. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Give us a second. Can we turn up Jonathan's volume?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, a little more, a little more.
Testing, testing.
Great. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so do we have any public comment, Eliza?
There is no public comment as of 3:30 p.m. today.
Okay. So we'll move on to reports and comments. 5.1 AEA. I see we have Stephanie Nixon here. Stephanie,
Hello.
you're on.
Hi. Where should I go? That's a good question.
Do you want to pull it? Do you feel uncomfortable sitting in a chair facing?
Do you want to
Yeah, you know.
Should I be like in the middle?
Yeah.
We can roll that table over.
We can get a throw.
Right here.
Oh, geez.
Let's roll.
My request.
Let's roll the table over.
Sure. No, I'm there. I don't want to block.
I like to not be sitting in a seat without a table.
That's okay, but we don't see you in the camera, so. Oh, okay, hello.
Yeah.
Thank you for forming the speaker's pulpit.
Hey, guys.
Yeah.
It's Tara here. Just let you know, Liza, there's a lot of feedback from the people that are on virtual, just to let you know. So I don't know what the speaker system is, but it's,
Everybody who's on their laptop has to turn their speaker all the way down, because they're just using this.
I haven't even logged in.
Yeah, I'm not on the video.
I'm on the, so it's not
It's not us.
that,
Mine's
whatever
fine.
just happened sounds way better. So thank you.
great.
Okay.
I think you can flip over.
It's me.
Go, Stephanie, go.
Stephanie, we have you down for 5 minutes.
Yes.
If you need 6, that's okay.
I'm good.
Even so.
Well, thank you. That's very generous of you. Thank you. I'm just here to provide an AAA update, which is just a reminder. I'm Stephanie Nixon. I'm the president of the Aspen Education Association. I'm just going to run through the executive council. We still have Marnie White on as our vice president. Our secretary is Amy Cord. Our new treasurer is Adrienne Nelson. She's at the middle school. And then of course we've got, we're headed up by Ski Country Uniser, which is of course Eric Hansen. And then our CEA president is Amy Baca-Oler. So I just wanted to kind of do a quick overview of, just that we're here in the spirit of collaboration. We're looking forward to working together. I just wanted a quick reminder of, kind of what it is that we do. We're basically here representing all staff and faculty in the district. We had a whole lot of work done last year, We're really excited this year to maybe just keep the train moving forward in communication. I'm just really excited to work again with this team. The ARs in the building at AES, we have Jamie Mahaffey. At AMS, we have Dina Barrow and Sarah Graber. At AHS, we have Kate Korn and Tamara Wilson. Transportation, we have Benta Doolin. And for the ESPs, which is the new term for classified employees, education support professionals would be Laura Swenson. So I'm just here to kind of remind y'all who we are, and we're here and we're ready to go. And we're looking forward to doing what we can to be in person and keeping kids safe and educating kids as much as possible. So that's our goal. And thanks so much for having me. Thanks. That's right. I'm not awkwardly leaving this table.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I said stage left. Thank you so much.
That was so quick. We're ahead of schedule now.
Yeah.
5.2 Pickle County Public Health. Kurt Dahl, is he on
Kurt is here. Remotely.
remotely?
Good afternoon. I'm remote. Can you hear me?
Please.
Good. Good afternoon. Kurt Dahl, I'm the Environmental Health Director for Picken County. Jordana's on vacation this week, lucky her. So I offered to do a quick update. The Board of Health meeting was last Thursday and they adopted a universal masking policy. So I wanted to run through that really quick with you as part of our 10 minutes today. So I don't know if it's worth sharing my screen, if everybody that's in person can even see if they have a screen. I have the order up that's in front of me and I can just go through it. I think at the discussion on Thursday, the Board of Health went ahead and adopted a universal masking policy for all persons, regardless of vaccination status, in a number of facilities, including schools K through 12, licensed childcare facilities, home-based family childcares, and a few others that are listed on the order itself. The important one really for the school here is K through 12 schools, both public and private, and then the licensed childcare. So we think about preschools as well. And the masking is required for anyone 2 years or older, regardless of vaccination status. So that'll include staff and visitors as well as students. There are some exemptions that are allowed. The medical exemption that was previously in place last year when we had the mask order is still in place as well. And then there are a few exceptions that the public health order goes through. So things like if you are eating, you can't have a mask on. If you're communicating with somebody who's hearing impaired or hearing impaired yourself, you're not required to wear a mask. I'm not going to go through every one of these, but there are several exceptions. We can forward this public health order out if you all do not have a copy. But needless to say, there are some very obvious ones. Napping is another one. For small children who are napping, they're not required to wear a mask during that period of time. The one change that happened to the board that was different from the staff's recommendation was the Board of Health asked that on October 1st, 2021, the entities that are required to do this can become exempt from the order if 70% of the total population at the facility is fully vaccinated and our incidence rate in Pitkin County is less than 50 cases per 100,000 persons in the past 7 days. So that 7-day incidence rate is less than 50 per 100,000. When I looked this morning, our incidence rate was at 103. So the good news there is that's a downward trend. A little more than a week ago, I think we were just around 200 cases per 100,000. So we're on our way down. Hopefully we continue that trend. Obviously, we'll have to track that closely. And then the third condition for an exemption would be that they consult with Pitkin County Public Health. So again, when we have a facility where we do get that 70% or more vaccinated with a low incidence rate, that facility can consult with our department and we can just agree that they will then be exempt from that piece. So that is in essence what was adopted. The other piece that's required is any facility that falls under this order has to post this information so that people understand that they are required to wear masks when they are on campus or inside a facility. The other one that we've had questions on already that I wanted to bring up is this also includes extracurricular activities. So this does include if you're in a club sport, I'll pick on hockey because my kids play hockey. That actually, the hockey is an indoor sport, and so they would be required to wear masks unless we get to the point where we can meet this exemption that I just discussed. So all of those other pieces still are in play for kids K through 12. So I thought I'd stop there really quick and just see if there were any questions around that. We are putting out one other thing really quick. We are putting out an FAQ. We were just looking it over as staff today, so we should be publishing that shortly to help with questions around the public health order. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Kurt. I appreciate that. My question is around how we know who's vaccinated. and how we get to that 70% number. I understand we can ask employees, but for students, I'm not sure I've heard where we are, and I know there's a survey that went out, Dave,
Mhm.
asked people. But that's not requiring names or knowing exactly, so where are we legally and morally on the requirements for finding out which students are vaccinated? People that aren't employed by us, but are attending school. Obviously, we know those 12 and under 12 are not, but once that comes out, and they're able to get vaccinated, where are we in terms of ability to find out who is vaccinated and how to do that?
Right. So just to repeat your question, it sounds like you're asking how do we, or who is responsible for verification of the vaccination of the facility or entity? That's a great question. Obviously there's a voluntary aspect of it, but if we're looking for additional, can, as an example, say public health actually look that information up, and you know what, I am going to have to come back to you with that answer. I've got staff hopefully working right now. Let me see if I can get that to you immediately. I know we discussed it, but I don't remember that we actually got a resolution around the legal side of things. And I think we were still working on it, the legal side. So let me see if I can get an answer while we're in this meeting. And if not, I will have to get that to you.
I mean, my understanding, my daughter's doctor's appointment, her vaccination just showed up on her record, right? That's the Colorado system. So any kid who got vaccinated here, we should be able to at least get a high level number information on that, I would think. But whether we're asking individual people or not is a secondary kind of legal question. I think outside of Pickens County Health, if we're allowed to ask people or not.
Right.
I don't know.
And my understanding of HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability Act, which provides for the privacy of your records. And I am not an attorney, and I don't play one on TV either. So, but if you ask somebody and they volunteer that information, that is not a HIPAA violation. I think what we're trying to make sure is our department has access to SIS, which is the state system that you referred to, the Colorado Immunization Information System. And I think we want to make sure that we are on solid ground if we access SIS to look up those records. And I think that was the legal question that we had. So we're trying to make sure that if we have that authority, and if we do not, then how do we go through that determination? I think the other thing that we're going to look at as well is discussing with other counties. We have a local public health directors call tomorrow that I can bring this question forward to see how other counties are handling it, or if there has been an official determination from the state health department on how to do this, because this language is consistent with CDPHE's recommendations. So yes, sorry, I'm sorry I don't have one right now. I know we're working on that, but let me see if we had an answer that came in since we talked about it earlier today.
Thank you. We are going to turn to Dave. I think he has a comment.
Well, actually.
And then Jonathan after Dave. Oh,
Sorry, Kurt, if you could speak to the science behind masking. I've had a number of parents reach out arguing that masks are making kids sick, it's increasing carbon dioxide levels, et cetera, et cetera. That was not our experience in the schools last year, but I know you guys are watching at a much larger level the science around COVID. If you could speak to the science of masking, I think the community would love to hear the thinking behind the science of masking.
Right.
Thank you.
So thanks, Dave. So first and foremost, the CDC, this is following recommendations from the Centers for Disease Control, as well as the American Pediatric Association. They both made recommendations for universal masking earlier this month for schools and for regardless of unvaccinated status of any individual on a school campus. So one, we're following that. Two, the science right now really points to that we have a greater reduction in virus spread when we're wearing masks. It is not a foolproof 100% mitigation effort, but it certainly does reduce the spread of the virus considerably. There's also some amount of protection that is given to the person wearing the mask from others who might be able to spread it. So it's a two-way road. our staff has put together a number of articles, and I'm wondering if it's easier to just share those articles with the group because I know there's interest, but essentially that talks through various efficiencies gained by the use of proper mask wearing and appropriate mask wearing as well. Those are two variables that are always important. You see a lot of people that were not wearing masks around their noses. And so again, donning that mask and actually using it properly is just as important as the mask itself. So I know there's been some questions around that. I know the staff also looked up information around carbon dioxide. I think the one article that I've seen talked about a very small, 0.2% increase in intake in carbon dioxide. But again, that was with inside the mask, and they were talking about not necessarily at a blood level. So very minimal. Obviously, we have doctors and nurses with the Board of Health. We had 2 of our doctors that chimed in and said, I wear masks all day. Obviously, if this was a concern, we think we would have identified it. Again, I can share that paper if there's an interest in the group that talked about the very minimal, if negligible amount of CO that might be, or CO2, sorry, that might be increased with mask usage. And so, the benefit far outweighs the concern there.
Great, thank you. Yeah, if you could share that paper with us, we can put it on the website and reference it when those questions come up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll ask Josh to do that.
Thank you, Kurt. Oh, and Jonathan, you had a question.
Yeah, Kurt, I wanted to understand what the unit of measure is. So is it a school or is it the district?
My understanding from what we adopted, and it's funny you say this because I just slacked the person who wrote the public health order to verify this. My understanding going in was that we were treating this as different buildings. So the high school could be separated out with the exemption because we know that we already have vaccine available for kids 12 and older through the Pfizer. So we could look at this exemption sooner for the high school than the middle school and the grade school. I'm verifying that right now to make sure that I say that right because it just says entities in the public health order, but that's my understanding. So again, I'll follow up to make sure that is correct with you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think it would be good if it was the schools. That way they could hopefully be incentivized to move forward with the vaccinations and all those things. I think that would be helpful as soon as they're readily available.
Right, and I know that's what we discussed. I just was reading through the order. I just want to make sure that I have my with you, but that was my understanding. So I'm waiting on that Slack right now. Hopefully she'll get back to me with that one too.
Okay, thank you.
Since they're so. Okay. Okay. So we're so few that I thought if anybody else in the audience here has any other question, that I thought this was a reasonable place, venue and time to ask it.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is I think it'd be helpful if Licking County Health and the school could work together on one place that all this information rests. Both their requirements and rules, as well as the research that they're pointing to justify those requirements and rules. So just sort of a centralized place, and whether that sits on Licking County Health's website or our website, or they link together, I think it would just, serve as rather than us just sort of posting the 5 things that we think are most relevant, I think it should come together in one spot to be a more joint effort from a policy perspective.
It's a fair, I mean, I understand that right now because we have guidance coming from several different places and trying to pull from those sources and understand which ones make sense to me. So I certainly, we're working with the school already on a number of other issues. So I certainly will, we can bring that up at our meeting tomorrow to talk through that. The one other piece that I just wanted to highlight, different than the public health order, but it's an outcome of the universal masking requirement. We are changing protocols with quarantine, different than last year. because we have the universal masking policy in place, we have this mitigation effort already. Last year, when we had a positive case in a classroom, we ended up quarantining either initially that whole classroom or that cohort. And then towards the end of the year, went to targeted tracing. Different this year and consistent with what others are doing in the state, we're looking at not immediately quarantining either the class or the cohort when we have a positive case. There may be some instances where we do need to use quarantine still, but it won't be like last year because we recognized how disruptive quarantine was. So we're working with David and his staff on, it's a pretty loose statement from the state health department. So we're trying to work through some of the specifics, but wanted you to know that at least our intent is very much to try to limit the amount of quarantine and if not quarantine anyone at all, that's really where we'd like to go. Again, we will reserve the ability to quarantine if we need to. If we see transmission in the classroom from several cases, then we may want to exercise that. But given the data we're seeing last year, we're not confident that we'll need to do that. So I think that's a good news piece that hopefully we can get have less kids quarantined this year so that they're in class and in learning in person throughout the year.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
I think that also needs to be well articulated to the parent community. It was a big source of issues last year. As far as frustrations with, as you said, lots of kids being quarantined, but not lots of those kids getting sick. So I think that whatever that protocol is should be very clearly articulated and communicated. And with the understanding that there will be some exceptions, sometimes things will pop up, but just to make sure that folks understand what the rules are. There was a lot of confusion last year around that we were getting as board members from the parent community.
Yeah, and I think, we recognize the challenges there. I think, from the direction we've been given with state health and then even our own data, yeah, the limit or the data indicates there was some transmission, but not a lot. So we're hoping that the mask usage is going to continue to limit that so that we're not doing that. So, but we recognize that it's not just an in-person learning issue for the children. It impacts mental health, it impacts parents, it impacts income. There's a larger piece going on here that we're all trying to figure out how to balance through this and prevent the spread of the disease and yet still maintain what we need to.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, are we ready to move on to bond? Do you have another? Okay, great. So 5 points. Thank you very much, Kurt.
Thank you.
Bond update, Damien Spar. Hello, Damien.
Hello, how are you? I hope everyone is doing well. And I was pleased to hear what a wonderful discussion you've had around masking and children's safety, because across the country, discussions are not so civilized and appropriate. So I applaud. Would you like me to share my screen, or is there a moderator to share that? I can do that either way.
Would you please share your screen? Thank you.
Certainly. Tell you what, I want to make sure I have my partner's last comments, and I did not have that. So give me just a minute.
Damien, I have it ready if you need me to.
You know what, if you have the latest thing that Bob Daniel gave you, let's use that.
Okay.
Please. And I'll just work through that. It's pretty brief, but thorough. So for those of you who do not know who I am, I'm Damien Spar. I'm the program executive as the owner's rep. Bob Daniel, who is my counterpart and the local program executive, will talk about housing. The first portions of this that I'd like to go over are the update that is related to the facilities that are not related to housing. And regarding the design process, there's been a lot of work over the last 2 months, and Cunningham is proceeding on design related to the elementary and high school classroom and learning environments. They will be doing middle school It just so happens that with the changes in principles, it's kind of flowed that way. They are about to embark on the next phase of deferred maintenance projects for design work there, as well as safety and security. And they are getting ready to perform a study on the use of the district theater and performing arts areas of the district. We've done some furniture acquisition with some initial selections for the elementary school and high school occurring with classroom and learning environment design. That's some things that are ongoing for the selection process. We're going to be working through that with the administration as to how we kind of pre-qualify vendors and then get best pricing. We did want to get some flexible classroom furniture, and that's one space of furniture that really could, fit in the boardroom. And that we've shopped around a little bit, and I think Mrs. Warho is about ready to order that, and that will be here very shortly. On the next slide, we're talking about some of the other things that are going on. We have the programming document that's been published by Cunningham. I will actually be reviewing that with Dr. Ball and Bob Daniel on Thursday. From that, there'll be a project selection list compiled, and we'll coordinate with the administration, present that back to the board for input. We've had initial discussions with Holy Cross on net zero initiatives surrounding solar, and we're drafting some goals for the net zero initiative to be reviewed again with administration, presented to the board shortly. We also started to set up our backbone for the project accounting system. Finally, some other upcoming actions are determination of projects for recommendation and the budgets that go with them, as well as the schedules, and continued design and deferred maintenance project construction. Some of that is underway. I think some of that's listed in the next slide here. Oh, I'm sorry. Eliza, are there slides that have pictures? If we go back, was there something missing, or maybe that got cut out?
Yeah, they're above. So let's start with the
So thank you very much. So at the elementary school, what we did for what we call priority one, and we're calling that kind of late summer, fall work, is we picked some things that didn't require a lot of design so we could get moving on them quickly, and that we knew if we made these repairs, we wouldn't have to go back and change them because of future programming changes, et cetera. So we were being smart and strategic about what we would repair right away. One of the biggest offenders of needing repair is the elementary school terrace stair replacement. You can see at the top and on the right that the stairs are really in bad condition and creating a safety hazard. What we're doing is for one of this, there's one stair that we're removing and blocking off. There's another stair, I think, that we're repairing and then replacing. So we've got work going on there. We've got work going on at the elementary school roof, and I think that we may have mislabeled that, might be the middle school roof repairs down below, as well as some bus barn area asphalt and paving repairs. And I think we have one more slide there on photos. Oh, sorry, we're back into the design process. So on top of that, all across campus, we're replacing the faucets and the flushometers with touchless faucets and flushometers. Obviously, there's numerous good reasons to do that. What I'd like to do is let Bob Daniel update everybody on housing, and then we will take questions. Bob, are you able to jump on?
I am.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to the board members and others present. I just want to provide you the quick update on housing and what's occurring in that realm relative to the district. Currently, as you know, as board members, the district owns 50 affordable housing units that comprise about 102 bedrooms. The majority of this inventory was developed anywhere from 20 plus years ago. And so one of the things we did was commission McKinstry to do a housing facilities condition assessment. So that assessment was done in July. We've had a preliminary report generated by McKinstry. We should have a second generation of that report prepared and presented to Damien and myself that we'll review with Dr. Baugh this week. The majority of that report had to do with systems associated with the residences, heating and cooling, mechanical systems, roofs, exteriors, etc. So we know that we have a significant amount of, if you will, maintenance or deferred maintenance and or refurbishment associated with those components. In addition to that, the goal of the district at this point that's put forth is to update or bring current the inventory. And that's from a standpoint of things like carpeting, flooring, kitchens, cabinets, appliances, et cetera, to really end up at the end of this process with the district having not new units, but certainly refurbished units. And I sort of look at this like any multifamily owner would look at their own inventory, that they do a refresh or a refurbish of their inventory as they have move outs. The district has had many of its occupants be in these units, some of them since its inception. So there's really an opportunity for us to improve the quality of the housing inventory for the district and for its occupants. In addition to that, we are continuing to proceed with the acquisition of the 834 West Holland property. For those of you that have been in the community a while, you know that as the old Poppy's restaurant site on Holland and 8th Street. That acquisition is comprised of 7 units and 18 bedrooms. That acquisition is conditioned upon the developer, the seller, obtaining a certificate of occupancy based upon construction delays that they have had, as well as a few issues the city has had them go back and look at associated with the permit. That occupancy is now being pushed out. They're anticipating a delivery at the end of September. We have been more conservative than that because of the need to get a final certificate of occupancy and close the transaction. So we're looking for a 4th quarter occupancy. There's been some units on the units out on Shining Mountain Way and Old Snowmass that were acquired by the district from the town of Assault, which were originally old Rocky Mountain Institute units. And Old Snowmass have got some plumbing repairs that need to be done, and those will be taken care of. I'm sorry, go back up one slide real quick. I want to talk a little bit about West Ranch because some of the board members may know about some system failures we've had at West Ranch. We're looking at repair options for the on-site wastewater treatment system there. It's effectively or referred to as a septic system. We have been working with a local engineering firm, Orwick Fork Engineering, to determine the appropriate repairs there. During that process, we're also investigating the opportunity or the capacity to add units to that site. So we're undertaking that investigation right now. Without any significant changes to the system or changes to the residences, we could add a potential of 8 additional bedrooms there. The cap is not a land use cap. It's based upon what can be administered through the state for an on-site wastewater treatment disposal system. And so that gives us effectively 8 bedrooms for us to be able to add to that property. We're looking at the opportunity to expand that based upon some creative and innovative uses of water and wastewater treatment. Go forward to the next slide, please. So the next housing actions that we have is to take that McKinstry report, look at the systemic items that are associated with that, as well as work with Ellen Wood, the new housing director with the district, to come up with what I call the refurbishment or upgrading of the existing residential units. During that process, we'll determine if there are any necessary design requirements that would necessitate any design component or design professionals. And then also working to find a contractor to work with us on sort of a rolling refurbishment we could start to work through in the summer of 22. The additional housing inventory search. Again, as I mentioned, the original inventory the district had was 50 units. It's acquired lots at Southside, which would require building products. There are 2 units that were acquired in the 210 West Main Street property, the Northridge duplex or side of duplexes being acquired, and then of course the 7 units on West Holland. So we're continuing to investigate other opportunities for adding to that district housing inventory, and we'll be meeting with the housing subcommittee or subgroup probably in the next 30 days to explore those more fully. So with that, I'm glad to answer any questions board or others might have regarding housing.
Thanks, Bob. I do have one question about the McKinstry report. I know it's not final yet, but surprising, not surprising? Good shape. I mean, what kind of?
You know what I've had in my mind, and then this is, there are a lot of mechanical systems that need to be addressed. Some of these are not like very, like immediately, like they're failing now. But we have several that over the course of the next couple of years or even 3-year window that we'd be seeing significant replacement. Our goal is to accelerate that replacement because of the available proceeds through the bond program. I'd say it's not surprising given the age of some of these residences, and the fact that not much has been done to them over the course of the years. Our goal that we've presented to the what we call the bond team, which is comprised of district officials, Dr. Baugh, Jorge Calderon, Linda is a part of that, and also Eliza. Is really at the end of the day, our goal is to be able to deliver to the district refurbished units, both aesthetically and systemically, and also present what we call as an ongoing capital contribution program, whereby they can contribute capital out of the rent proceeds. So there's a bucket of money ongoing that's a sinking fund that the district has access to, so that we can keep these units up to date and in good repair. So that's our goal. I'd say that's not only our goal just with housing, that's also our goal with the on-campus facilities as well. So that we give a roadmap for the district to be annually setting aside money to capital to repair, replenish, refurbish, and replace the existing facilities.
Okay, so we should maybe be able to get a big chunk of it out of proceeds, but then be set up by you guys for a plan to have a reserve fund for all ongoing maintenance, so we don't have this issue again in 20 years.
Yeah, so we don't have this big bolus of deferred maintenance that we have to address through a bond issuance. That would be the goal.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, Bob, could you set up a meeting with the housing committee? Probably not sooner than later, I guess. When I heard 30 days, it sounded like a long time.
Well, we talked to the team about doing that. So I think it's just a matter of making sure that we can organize that with the team members. But yeah, that's definitely on the short horizon here.
Okay. And then another thing, I don't know that it needs to be presented all the time here, because there might be things that are confidential in there in terms of just negotiations. But at least to the committee, it would be good to make sure that we have kind of a project list.
Yes.
And so project A, B, C, D, here's what's the next, here's what we've done, here's the next step.
Right.
Who's going to do what? Because I feel like we kind of got stuck on a couple things, and we could probably just move a little faster if we're just kind of keeping to have a little more clarity around who's got the next action item and what it is we're agreed on.
I completely agree. I think we hit a little bit of the summer doldrums. I completely agree.
Okay, thanks.
You bet. Any other questions from board members or staff that we might have addressed in other their discussions.
I wanted to mention both for you and Damien that I really appreciated the photos of the school work that has to be done. To see what we're talking about is very helpful. So I appreciate
Sure,
it.
and I think the other thing I'd say, Damien, we're trying to keep, we're shooting for brevity in this presentation. We're really working on, this year's priorities, meaning what can we get done this fall? And then we've got a bigger effort on what we call the second and third levels of priorities relative to replacement, refurbishment, or repairs throughout the campus facilities. And Hazelden Construction are in that. They've proved to be very valuable through this process to help us identify what we can do quickly and what we need to take a little more time and have some more thoughtful design on.
Great. Thank you both very much.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll go on to 5.4 Superintendent Update. Okay, Dr. Bob.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. Eliza, if you could be so good as to drive, that would be fantastic. Okay, that's last one. Okay, this is time for our superintendent's update. In the interest of brevity, I'll run through this fairly quickly. Several teams met with De La Cruz to work on belonging and inclusion training, sort of an extension of numerous conversations last year. We are working with Mr. De La Cruz to schedule time to work with several other leadership teams in the district. We have not been able to lock those times down at this point, but Bill ran very informative and I thought powerful initial trainings for both the board that I heard through feedback and then also through our district leadership team, which was considered very powerful and very relevant to the conversation that's occurring both locally and nationally at this point in time. Next slide. We're going to ask the principals to give us a brief update, but first I want to welcome Ashley Blackens to her first official board meeting, and Ashley hit the ground running, has been hiring teachers right, left, and center, as well as meeting her teams, and really has been a great addition to Aspen Elementary School and the district. Ashley.
Thank you for that welcome. I am very excited to be here. As Dave said, I hit the ground running, more like hit the ground listening. I conducted, I was able to meet with a bunch of different staff members, community members, and families over the last few weeks to try to understand a little bit more and about the Aspen Elementary community, as well as with district leadership team. And it has been very informative. I've really learned a lot. I feel that I certainly have a lot to learn in this next phase of my entry plan, which will be having our staff all come together tomorrow, and then of course our students joining next Wednesday, which is really going to be the highlight and what we're most excited for, what I'm most excited for. As Dr. Ball said, we did hire quite a few teachers this summer. We hired 3 classroom teachers, a kindergarten teacher, a first grade teacher, and a third grade teacher. Our last hire we made on Friday, which was awesome. And we also hired an art teacher, 2 special education teachers in the process. We also hired a speech and language pathologist and a paraprofessional. We're in the process of hiring another special educator and a school psychologist that will be district-wide. So a lot of hiring has been going on. Our new teachers started 2 days ago, or no, yesterday. Seems like a long time. 2 days ago, yesterday, and they're very excited to be part of the elementary school community. One of the things I'm really excited about is working with Amy and Sarah and really creating a team where we're all rowing in the same direction and connecting all three schools. I think this is the IB implementation, QIP, MYP, and connecting with the DP program already at the high school will be an excellent way to I think I'm making my peers stop talking.
I'm glad I'm not the only one there.
So I just want to say, thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to being an active and visible part of the Aspen School District and the Aspen community. So thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
Katie, questions or
Uh,
not until we do the formal presentation?
No, the one thing I'm gonna like to make is for the, new principals to be able to make sure we have some parent opportunities, meet and greet type of opportunities that we weren't able to do during the interview process. So I'm sure that's planned.
Already been.
Yeah, we were able to have a couple of those 2 weeks ago. We had an online session, a virtual session, and we had an in-person session. And we're really excited for our Noche Latina that's coming up on Tuesday, where we can have a meet and greet specifically for our Spanish-speaking families. And we certainly will have many opportunities for family forums over the course of the school year as well. So thank you for that suggestion.
Jonathan, just move on. Okay, we'll move on. Great, thank you.
Welcome. Great to have you.
We'll kick it over to Amy Konjorsky over at AMS, who, like Ashley, has hit the ground running and 2 or 3 months in is a veteran of the school district at this point. And she too has had a very busy summer. So Amy.
Can you hear me?
Very well.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Sorry, I'm on my cell phone because I couldn't get my laptop connect. So good afternoon to the board. It's been a pleasure. And yes, I feel like an old timer at this point. We have been busy building our schedule to redesign the middle school schedule in alignment with the high school, as well as in alignment with IB and the 8 subject areas of the MYP program. And to incorporate time for the new curriculum in math and literacy. So with that, it's a confusing schedule at first, but it's coming together really nicely. Our literacy or language arts classes will be 90 minutes long. That goes with the recommendation of the curriculum. Our math classes will be 60 minutes long. And that also aligns with the illustrative math curriculum piece that we just adopted. And it also gets all of our subject areas the minimum of 50 hours of instruction in each subject area of IB. So we'll be explaining all that to staff tomorrow as we welcome them back into the building, and then to students and families as we roll out those schedules. It's been a pleasure. The last 2 days, we've spent, all of our math teachers and special educators have been involved in the illustrative math professional development. So people have been busy. We've had 11 teachers participating in that professional development, learning how to use the new resource to the maximum. It's got online components, it's got paper and print components, but really exciting work that we'll be learning and continuing to use and grow together with that piece. We've got the literacy curriculum training scheduled for August 20th. So that'll be Wit and Wisdom for 5th grade, as well as the American Reading Company for 6th through 8th grades. So busy with that new instructional focus, which is great work going on. And then the other big project that's being undertaken and planned and being adjusted is our 8th grade outdoor ed trip. As you know, that's like one of the hallmark events. And so really watching COVID guidance and really adjusting those plans. But we also changed the dates to allow families to observe Yom Kippur as families. So we moved the trip back a day, or up a day, I guess you would say. So the kids will be gone and the adults will be gone from September 8th through the 15th. So there is not a dull moment. As Ashley was talking about new teachers, I don't even want to count how many new teachers we have, but I think we have 7 people in new assignments across the building, and super excited about their energy and their work. Many of them have been involved in that math training, and then a couple of them have been involved in new teacher orientation. So it's been a great start. Tomorrow, the full faculty comes back, and we are going to spend time getting to know each other, doing a working styles inventory with a facilitator, Toby King, who will allow me to participate in that meeting, and learning more about how we'll all work together and what makes us like driven by work, I guess. So I look forward to that piece. And knowing the staff more. Julie, my new assistant principal, has yet to lay eyes on half of the staff. So she's super excited to meet all of them. I feel like I've met every person that's on staff. I certainly don't know them well, but some people have been instrumental in helping the summer go smoothly. So hats off to the folks who have put in that extra time and extra energy to setting Aspen Middle School up for success. And I think that's all I've got right now. I'm back at the middle school because we were cramming kids into their schedules as we spoke, and I didn't run up to the meeting in person. So I'm down here at the office trying to get that done.
No problem. Thank you very much. I have a question. More or less, how do the 60 minutes of math and the 90 minutes of literacy compare with last year?
Last year, the math classes and literacy classes were 70 minutes. Every class at the middle school was 70 minutes. They just rotated on a very, I would say, inconsistent manner. They were a 10-period schedule across the days, so no 2 days were alike. This year's schedule will be much more routine and pattern-based, with all classes being seen on Mondays, and then in a 45-minute segment, and then the longer class periods on the Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday patterns.
Great, thank you. And Katie?
So first of all, thank you for, I guess, speaking on behalf of some of the Jewish community, for accommodating the Yom Kippur holidays. It's been a conversation in the Jewish community for a long, long time. So really appreciate that. And I know I've heard from some of the members of the community that they're really pleased about that. So thank you. And then question about the curriculum for math. It's always a math discussion with middle school. What is currently the plan, just to update me as well as all the community members, in terms of advanced math and our movement to algebra in 8th grade? With this new curriculum, my understanding is that there is a compressed version that started in 5th will get kids to algebra in 8th grade. I just wonder if you could sort of talk about what's happening, per grade level to help the top half or third of kids that are looking for a compressed curriculum this year, or a more advanced curriculum. What's the plan right now?
The current plan, and of course, this is to be adjusted and modified and tweaked as the year goes on. But currently, there are 2 sections of I can speak 8th grade algebra scheduled for this fall here at the middle school. So the teams, I have created 2 teams at each grade level that will remain. So math and language arts teachers will share the same body of students. So each of those teams will have an algebra section to start this year. And we have a few students who want to take that assessment to get into that class so that they're showing their readiness for that class. At the 7th, 6th, and 5th grade levels, we're still going to work on what does that mean to be advanced in math? And is it a separate class, or is it an acceleration chunk of time within the class? And I just haven't had enough time with math teachers yet to really pinpoint what that's going to look like at the younger grades. So that's one of the key, I would say, first steps of bringing the math team back together. They've now all participated. High school teachers were in the illustrative math training today as well. So all of the teachers have the same training pieces in place for that curriculum drive, and the alignment between what does algebra mean and which standards are covered, and to ensure that all kids have that opportunity and that exposure to that rich curriculum. So right now it's dialed in for 8th grade to have 2 algebra sections going forward this whole school year. And we'll work on the 7, 6, and 5 as we move forward.
And
So I our answer than that, Katie, but right now I need some time with the teachers to really dial it in, as well as looking at the data. There's, obviously, we have CMAS scores that have just come out. I personally have not even laid my eyes on them with enough scrutiny, but we also have STAR data and of course assessment data and those pieces. And I really want to ensure that we have a good body of evidence. I don't want any student to be bored. And I don't want any student to be in a place of struggling and failing because they're not placed correctly. So we're going to do a lot of work on those assessments and analyzing the data that we already know about kids. And if we need additional data, then asking kids to show forth that additional data piece so that we can really have a good understanding. We had about 70 new families or returning from online instruction families register. So we're really trying to get those kids into the right place, as well as all the kids that were here last year into the right places. So have a scheduled assessment period for Friday, the 20th in the morning to really, there's a couple of families who really want to be accelerated in math. So we're going to really get those kids in to take those acceleration tests to make sure that we're placing them appropriately. And there's always the fluidity of moving. The beauty of middle school is credits don't matter like they do in high school. We can change and adjust, you know, midstream if we need to, or when that data presents itself.
Okay, thank you.
And Baron, did you have?
Well, I just wanted to say, I think Amy did a great job of explaining what's going on there. And I just want to just add that with the illustrative math, we'll be looking at doing that 6 to 8 compressed curriculum for next year. This year we will continue with the work that Amy and her team have already started. I just have to update the board that it was very successful in the sense that the high school staff like the algebra curriculum. They're actually asking to participate in the Learn Zillion units of study there. So that was definitely a nice bridging of the two programs as we went through.
They liked the illustrative.
They liked the Learn Zillion, which is what was started last year. So they were very excited about that. They're interested in having that be uniform across the algebra instruction. So already been completely precipitated by the teachers.
That's great. Jonathan, did you have questions, comments?
Nope, I think that's answered my questions. Maybe just, if I understood correctly, Amy, and what you're trying to do with the schedule is to get math going at the same time. So it gives a little more flexibility to helping kids be able to move around between classes. Is that correct, or is that a bad assumption on my part?
Yeah, no, they'll be in alignment so that if a student needs to grade accelerate, they can do that without their schedule being like completely messed up. Like they'll be able to go up a grade or to that advanced content pretty smoothly within the schedule that exists, which is great.
Okay, yeah, it's important to let parents know that, I think.
Sorry.
Okay.
Jonathan, repeat that, what your last comment to let the parents know that.
No, I just wanted to make sure that the parents understood that that was kind of the goal behind this, is also, you know, facilitating these types of things so that it's easier for students to be placed in the appropriate level, where it was much more difficult with the prior schedule. So, because a lot of times we don't really understand why this stuff is moving around, but you know, those could be the underlying benefits.
Absolutely. And I would say even as recently as earlier this week, we were talking about, should algebra be taught here at the middle school, or should we send all of the algebra students up to the high school? Personally, I want the algebra kids in the building if I can keep them, because that's an appropriate class for middle school for 8th grade. But if kids need to accelerate beyond that, then they'll jump up to the high school for high school level classes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to kick it over to our most veteran principal, Sarah, firmly into her second.
Firmly.
Firm.
Okay, so we're trying this. I'm on Zoom, but you guys can hear me. Okay. So hi, everybody. We have a lot going on at the high school right now. Due to the Delta variant, we are rescheduling about 8 80 kids for XED. So in the process of doing that, working with Pickens County Health for, mitigation strategies, that's kind of our biggest issue right now, trying to get everybody placed. So dealing with that, all of our XED courses leave either the 28th, 29th, or 30th. The 27th, our third day of school, is an all-day XED day preparing. We are also about to embark on our second round of interviews for an athletic director. Martha departed a little over a week ago. So Becky and I are doing all things athletics and asking for forgiveness because we just aren't. The coaches have been great, everybody's stepping up. So we are just ensuring that we have refs and all the pieces are in place. We have contests this week at home. So looking forward to that. We had a really great Noche Latina a couple of evenings ago, end of last week. We had a lot of families there. They were really grateful. So we'll just keep capitalizing on that, ensuring that everybody gets the information that they need in a timely manner. We also had a new student and family orientation. We normally meet the families one-on-one. This was really great because we met with them all together. They got to meet each other. They had tours, they played games, they met kids, and the parents all met each other. So that was a great change to this year. We're kicking off freshman's orientation on Monday. And we have the Aspen Ambassador Program, which is based off the nationally known Link Crew. So all of our 9th graders will be assigned 2 upperclassmen who will be their mentors and guides all year. They will also be assigned to their freshman seminar, renamed Freshman Connections class. We've revamped that class to capitalize on our partnership with Thrively. So kids will start to compile a portfolio of their strengths in that freshman connections class. They're also going to be doing personal projects and working on mini EEs. So with our new librarian, working on some of those writing and research skills in that freshman class.
That's great.
And let's see, we've got boot camp on Monday as well. So we have all our seniors returning to really get a jump start on college applications and essays. They've been meeting with Charlie and Karen over the course of the summer. Our enrollment is definitely up. Last year we were about 550. We are nearing 600. So we got a lot of people. We'll wait to see who actually shows up. That's where we are in terms of enrollment. And we are all hired except for an athletic director. We did just hire an administrative assistant in the front office. And we're excited to have her on board. She'll start next week. And I think that's about it. I'm sure there's a lot right now. XED and athletics are taking precedence, but we're looking forward to having teachers back tomorrow. We'll be spending a lot of time talking about the various texts that teachers chose to read over the summer. So that'll be kind of kicking off our group thinking. We're really excited to get on board and learn more about the MYP to kind of add to the alignment, and really excited to have Ashley and Amy on board. We've already met myriad times, and someone even commented, wow, I have all the principals in multiple meetings in one day. So it's been a great collaborative effort, and I think it's going to make a huge impact in the lives of kids K-12, even pre-K-12. So I think that's it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are we done with?
We're done with the principals update. I'll just run through a couple of things very quickly to get back on track. I think I'll run through these quickly. Great. So we did run a thought exchange recently. Obviously, the language has evolved a bit. For a brief moment there, I thought we were going to be post-COVID going into this year. But basically wanted to find out where people were and what they were thinking about as we went back to school. Obviously, the landscape is continuing to change, and we will probably be revisiting words like pivot this year, but hopefully not too soon. Next slide, please. So we had 376 participants, well over 15,000 ratings, not a whole lot of surprises, and it will tie into the conversation with Pickens County Health shortly. Next slide, please. Some of the key thoughts. Students in person was one of the top thoughts.
David, I'm sorry to interrupt, but are these parents or what?
Oh, so 4 demographic groups: parents, students, teachers, and staff.
Thank you.
And so we already filtered it down a little bit. The full report's quite a bit longer. I'll send that to the board later. But in-person instruction remains one of the top goals of our community, which is part of the reason we're supportive of both the masking as well as the vaccination efforts. Next slide, please. Again, trying to have kids in school remains one of the top thoughts. Next slide, please. Having kids learn and relearn how to be in school. Again, wanting kids to be in as normal a situation as possible. Next slide. So these are some of the thoughts that have been emerging. And we're very grateful to Sarah and Becky for their heroic efforts around supporting the athletic and extracurricular efforts so far this year. And these were thoughts from the parent constituency. I did want this slide to stay in. I wanted to share with the community that when we change, it's because we have to. It's not because we want to. That's a very important distinction. And when we had to go in school and out of school, it was driven solely by safety concerns. There were times last year when we had so many staffing kids in quarantines, we couldn't open safely. We couldn't cover the classes. The other thing that we can't do in a global pandemic is cover one another's classes like we used to, right? We couldn't combine classes like we used to. We were basically open or we had to close because we didn't have the staff. So I just want to be very clear. Our choice is to be open. And when we're not open, when we're in remote, which is also open, I get that. Thank you. I get that. It's not because we want to, it's because we have to. Our preferred state is open, doors open, students in class, teachers in class, teaching. That's what we do. And we're pretty good at it. And we're getting better at it through the efforts of the curriculum department or therapy, as the case may be. So anyway, thank you for that. I just did want to spend a little time on this slide to find out. We don't like the changes either, and we know they're hard. And we would spend many hours agonizing over every single decision. And then we'll vouch for, late night, Sunday night calls. So anyway, enough on that. Next slide, please. Famous differences slide is here in several forms, like the rest of the nation. There's a whole camp that is no mask, and then there's a whole camp that is masked. What was interesting was where these two constituencies, 19 in blue, 13 folks in green, they did have some commonalities, and they were very concerned about social and emotional needs. And so on the one hand, there's an argument that no masks is better socially and emotionally. On the other hand, masks is a much safer situation right now, so there is that piece of it as well. Next slide, please. We continue to talk about masks on this slide. Obviously, this is a refrain, and it's being seen in districts across the country. And we continue to have this discussion. Science, as Mr. Dahl shared with us tonight, is very clear that these darn masks do help mitigate the impact of COVID, but also other diseases, which we're seeing a real uptick in about 4 or 5 childhood diseases that usually manifest themselves later in the winter when more people are inside. One of the theories is that it's been such a hot summer that more people are spending more time in summer and then sharing those diseases. That being said, the masks will help with that. And all of the doctors who spent hours and hours and hours behind masks and operating rooms and other situations will vouch for that and have vouched for that, as well as supported by the research. Again, talking about masks and trying to get as close to normal as possible. We believe that by being in school and keeping schools open, that's as normal as we can get to right here, right now. There are several solution paths where we can get to removing the masks. We're most optimistic about the high school being the first out of masks. because we believe we have pretty high vaccination rates in the high school. Sarah has done an anonymous survey with some pretty encouraging results. We're very close to a tipping point in the high school, as well as having community trend lines dropping. That's really encouraging. Like Kurt Bell said, just a week ago, we were at close to 200 per 100,000 cases. We think a lot of that is driven by our out-of-town visitors. And as they return to their homes, that number will continue to come down. So we are striving to be as normal as possible. And we do believe in person with our great teachers. And by the way, our new crop of teachers are fantastic. We spent the last 2 days working with them and getting to know them a little better. Our principals, hats off to their teams for doing some great hiring this summer. So very excited about that. In this slide, there's the conversation. We'll go back real quick. To allow vaccinated students and staff to return in person. We're not there yet. We believe that the mask and testing staff and students, especially those in high-risk activities like contact sports, indoor sports, choir and band are also recognized as high-risk activities. So we're trying to figure that out. Like Kurt shared with you, we have a meeting tomorrow. We're hoping to get some definitive answers out of that. So, thank you. Next slide. At this point, we have a draft reopening plan. Again, we're 5 days away from having 5 school days away from having students on campus. Many of these things are non-negotiable, like for instance, masks for Pickens County Public Health. Masks are also mandatory on all buses and transportation per the CDC, right? We also rolled out mandatory vaccination for staff. I do need to point out that there is in Colorado and in federal guidelines as well, some opportunities to not get a vaccination. And we recognize that. Those people will work with Amy Littlejohn and our Human Resources Department. So this is kind of where we are now. It's subject to review and constant update. One thing we learned last year, but at this point, this is one of the safer, more aggressive strategies to have kids in as normal a setting as possible, while recognizing the Delta variant and possible other variants working away through the community. So questions from the board?
Do we have enough bus drivers to get kids to school?
So the answer is just barely. We are aggressively working on that and working with Amy Littlejohn. We're going to try to craft some press releases. We because of the split shift, we have enough bus drivers at the moment to get all our kids here and get all of our kids home. A number of districts around the country are, so we're not doing transportation this year. We can't. So far, we have not had to say that. Based on our location and based on the folks available, we're facing shortages in a number of places. We are scrambling to get pre-K teachers. We're scrambling to get more bus drivers. We are down 4 food service workers and 2 facility workers. So we are working hard to get those positions filled, but it remains a challenge. And almost any newspaper is sharing national shortages of not just materials, but also workers. So it is very hard to find staff, even with great benefits and location. So very good question. At the moment, that's me knocking wood. We can open, and we are aggressively trying hard to fill spots. But I want to point out that quite a few people have really stepped up. Last year, we had substitutes from the community. That was huge. We continue to face a substitute shortage. Several people work several jobs. Tamil Folk, our director of food services, would routinely drive buses for the transportation department. Jorge Calderon is working hard to get his folks, get the jobs open, get clean, and spare a person or two to help out. So everybody's trying to help everybody. It's a real challenge this year, but reaching out to the community right here to say, hey, we could sure use you if you want to come help. So.
Could you maybe give a quick, how do you become a substitute teacher if you want to?
So, how do you become a substitute teacher? And email to alittlejohn@aspenk12.net. We'll get you in that pipeline if you're not already in it. Or, just jump on the website to Human Resources. If you've ever thought about driving a bus, we will teach you how to do it and give you a ski pass, I think. So, boy, is that a great job. You can drive buses for an hour or two in the morning, but ski for a few hours, drive a little bit, go home and have a great dinner. So I know what I'm thinking about in about 6 years for retirement. So, you gotta think long range. So anyone interested in helping out, wonderful part-time jobs, wonderful people to work with. Amy Littlejohn is taking all queries, and you can reach out to her by email, or she's in our director. I don't know her extension off yet.
4002.
4002. 4003. 4002 is.
Just me.
Yeah.
4021.
Thank you.
All right, what is it?
4021.
Okay. 4021. It's the final extension through Jamie Littlejohn. With wonderful opportunities for service as well as part-time opportunities.
And in the past, there were confusion about the two different types of substitute teacher. Some needed fingerprinting and some did not. Is that?
Pretty sure everybody needs
They do.
fingerprinting.
Yes, absolutely. They all need to be fingerprinted.
That's good.
There are two categories. There's
Okay.
the emergency and there's the substitute who wants to become a teacher. And that's a career path. In many places around the country, substituting is getting your foot in the door of a school. It certainly is here.
Can I mention one more clarification?
Absolutely.
Emergency, you do not need a bachelor's degree. That's a one-year emergency substitute credential. A regular substitute credential, you need a bachelor's degree at a minimum.
So for all the ski instructors who are watching this, you want to know that you do not need a bachelor's degree. Emergency certified substitute.
We have 20 participants. I hope at least one or two can become a substitute.
To the reporters. that are on.
Especially for friends and family. If anyone has nephews or nieces wondering what to do in a gap year, have we got an opportunity for you?
And I was always calling on Katie before Jonathan. So Jonathan, do you want to go next this time with any questions? No.
I'm good.
Okay, Katie?
Just the sales pitch on the substitute teaching. My husband did this all last year, predominantly in the preschool. They loved having a man in there because it was, the vast majority of the teachers are female, and the little boys really clung to him. So it was a great experience. He loved doing it. He got paid as well, which is always nice. For, very flexible work. So please sign up. And I know there were some issues with getting the signups to happen last year. It was a little bit of a pain, but I think it's easier now. So hopefully Amy will make that process as easy as possible for everybody.
And I think I pivoted away before I gave Katie and Jonathan an opportunity to ask Sarah questions. Did you have any questions about the high school? Oh, maybe not.
No.
Okay, all right.
So just want to underscore 4021.
That was
And
important.
I did notice several press members will be reaching out tomorrow for further conversation. Some really good stories about wonderful opportunities in the Aspen School District. And that concludes the superintendent's update.
Thank you very much. And any board members have any comments to say other than what's in our written board member updates? No, Katie and Jonathan?
I think the only thing is that the FAB is getting up and running again. I think Linda sent out some meetings, proposals, so we'll be getting back into that as well.
Sorry, I didn't hear for what?
For the FAB, okay, that that we did get the invitation set out and we'll be starting up with that again. I think, is it next week or the following? I can't remember the date, but I have it in my calendar now. That's the only update there.
Okay, thank you. So we will move on to discussion item, 6.1, policy and regulation updates related to Title IX legislation. Dave?
So this is the first read. And so we're asking the board to look these over. These are coming to us from CASB. Talking with Amy Littlejohn, who is our certified Title IX coordinator. Did I have that title right? Yep. So there might be a slight language change or two in a couple of the policies. They talk about targets, and we're thinking about using a different word. Not targets, but the complaint. And so we might change it from target to complaint. So that would be, we would ask the board to review these for discussion and approval of the next board.
What's the, I guess what the first question is, it says that the regulations went into effect a year ago.
Correct.
So we're doing this now a year later, if that's okay?
It's better late than never,
Okay.
and everything slowed way down with COVID, so candidly. But yes, we are doing that now, and so be helpful moving forward.
But the attachments say 8/20/21, is that just what was
That's,
attached?
yeah, that's the thing that they're being presented to you for the first read. So then what happens is when we adopt these, the adoption date will be whatever that board meeting. So if it's in September, we'll say adopted September. But legally, these did go into effect last year.
So not having read the full Title IX regulations, just our adjustment to make those, I'm assuming or hoping that we're using, other than that one word, we're using consistent language and pretty much plagiarizing whatever the requirements say we have to do.
So
Is that correct?
So plagiarizing isn't quite the word. I would use adopting the recommendations provided by CASB's lawyers.
Okay.
So, you know, and this is actually a really good way to manage policy adoption moving forward. They keep us current and abreast of Colorado School Code. We just received our manuals for 2020 today. You know, we don't want to rush this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's constantly changing, right? So that being said, this helps make us current, helps us, and this may be something that gets touched again almost annually, because Title IX seems to be evolving fairly quickly. Yeah.
And is it fair to say that all or most or majority of the other Colorado districts are adopting the same language?
Mostly, and they may do like their own version. Many districts will spend vast amounts of time and money putting their own brand on a policy, but there are elements of it that are non-negotiable. It's school code, it's federal code, Title IX's federal stuff. And it's, you know, it's obviously very important. So minimally, most Colorado school districts would adopt the CASB recommendations. If they want to spend a lot more time on it and really put their brand on it, they will then do that.
So in that vein, not that I want to put our brand on what the policy is, but I did go and read some of our student handbook material in reference to this, and I think that we might have some inconsistencies if we adopt this language within that as well.
So what will need to happen is that we adopt this language and then we pull the handbooks into alignment. And it can be done very quickly by putting a hyperlink to this policy as approved in our repository of policies.
And one thing in particular I noticed was along the lines of dress code policy. and gender neutralizing it. It doesn't mention genders, but it mentions articles of clothing that are gender specific in certain, especially the middle school policy actually is the one in particular. I don't know where I'm pointing. I'm pointing at the principals even though Amy's up there. So I would just want to, make sure that that's on as if Amy doesn't have enough to do here.
Well, handbook revision is definitely part of the principal goals,
Okay.
but they can always be reduced. And now that this Amy's here, that Amy's here.
We got two Amy's on the back.
Once we can get schools open, then we can revise the handbook to share this with the parents.
That's great.
No, and I would just add that, Katie, I just was reviewing the policy handbook and I also noticed some really out of date things that really need upgrades. It just hasn't been gotten to yet.
Yeah, no, I get it. I just, this made me think about it because there's very specific language in it that suggests that it's an important thing to do once we adopt, assuming we do adopt this language.
Jonathan?
And actually, the adoption of this language allows us to go back into the handbooks to revise them.
Yeah.
So it's very helpful as a field practitioner.
Right.
Right, so we can do that.
Great.
Jonathan?
Yeah, no, I think we need to get in line with the language of CASB and 100% agree on that. Let's just make sure that we're, I guess, like we say, getting all their ducks in a row, just like Katie said, and that we are kind of trying to toe the correct line. I guess, I don't know. It seems like if there's a specific guidance that says these are the words that you should use, I think those are the kind of way we should be going about this, just in general, if that's the guidance, and as opposed to trying to overly wordsmith it and get in line with the state policy. I think is the way to go.
Great. Thank you.
So our second reading is at the next meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
And I'd like to bring some policies, I think all this fall and coming to the winter, policies that do have to be kind of reviewed and updated.
The board policies?
Board and administrative policies that are required by the state. Like Dave said last year, now that we're getting back into the system and out of COVID just a little bit, we have time to focus a little bit more on our handbook and other items like that. So kind of new from last year, but we're going to continue this work throughout the whole year, hopefully.
So from an employee perspective, that's already been happening, right? The employee handbooks or rules and regulations, we've already moved into some of that. So it's been started. It's not, we haven't been sitting on it too much. Yeah.
No, I mean, we've been working on it, and every employee gets a handbook, it'll get a refresh, and as we update them.
Okay.
Are they electronic now, the handbook? Are they physical handbooks?
But students are
For
staff.
the staff? You said every employee gets a handbook.
Right. So I think it was electronic last time I checked.
Yeah, it's electronic and it's in line, it's just an overview of the policy, the pertinent policies.
That makes it easier if it's electronic to change it.
Yeah, much easier to refresh.
Great, we'll move on if everybody's good with two action items. 7.1 GPAE annual agenda planning exhibit. Did we have any specific changes to any meetings that you needed to point out, Eliza?
No, and I just attached something for your review as well as board, just kind of an overview of what the year could look like. I kind of want to make this a working document, so we know what's coming up in every meeting. So just asking the board and the administration to look that over to make sure all the dates, updates comply.
It looks great. Is there a way to print it in one document? Can you reformat it so that we can print it?
Yeah, figure that out.
It also, the document, the second tab, board officer in terms is a little outdated by like 10 years.
Yeah.
It's only a decade, it's okay.
I don't, just looking at some of the things, I don't know if we need to move when are we gonna work on our priorities? I see it says share them in September. Is that the second one? But when are we actually gonna be able to get together and work on that?
I guess it's up for discussion. I mean, I'm gonna look at this document as a living document that we can change these dates and times if needed. So,
I guess the ones that are under monitoring are the mandatory ones that we have to check off each year, is that correct? Just to make sure I'm reading this right. Is, you know, because they all have letters and numbers on them. You know, OEs, REs, blah, blah, blah.
and that's a review of policies as well. So going through each one of those policies, to make sure we like the language. We did that similar last year a handful of times, but this is kind of more of a schedule of when we'll look at every.
So before we get too much in the weeds about all of that, Dave was gonna try to get the CASB board policies for us to review. Because ours are outdated, many of ours are outdated, or we don't like them for a lot of reasons we discussed last spring. So maybe in a couple meetings, we could have the CASB board policies to look at.
Have those on the next one?
Okay, so that was actually my question. Are those under that line 6? When we say review the policy, is that reviewing how we're doing in the policy, or is that actually looking at rewriting the policy? And related to, you know, what? Because the thing that I'd just like to say is I think when we tried to do that policy by policy, they're so interrelated that you can't do it that way. You have to just have to take the time to look at all of them together because there's so many cross references now.
And ours were had become so convoluted that we thought looking at a fresh set from CASB, which has kept them up to date year to year, and they revise them regularly. We thought that might be a great way of maybe moving slowly away from coherent governance, and to a whole new set of policies that we can set our own schedule for. We can, once we get them, we can see if we like them, and if we do, we can set our own schedule.
Doesn't CASB recommend that same governance policy though? I thought
they used policy governance, which was the non-education portion of.
Okay, so it is different. Is it different? The CASB approach is a different approach than what we've been using a little bit?
Yeah.
It is.
I believe so.
I thought it was the
Maybe
same.
you can do
It's slightly different. I wouldn't call it, I mean, they're both forms of policy governance.
Right.
So coherent governance is a subset of policy governance. At the end of the day, it's you write a policy and that's what you use to give direction to the district.
I think we all thought that ours had become opaque and were not easy to.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, our policies, the way they're written, they're so broad. And the way we've defined the way they can be interpreted is also so extremely broad that it really doesn't, do much. We would like, they kind of say, yeah, we want all the kids to be educated really well. I mean, would kind of sum up some of the policies, I guess.
We may not
And then
love, we may not love, CASB may not be a huge improvement, but I think we want to
Let's
try.
take a look at it and see.
Yeah.
I don't think that
But I
is.
think Dave has some good experience there, and we can definitely do things in a more detailed manner from a policy perspective, and that gives clearer, things. Just to use one that's not even educational, HR policy. I mean, it says in there that we will perform evaluations, but then in the monitoring report, they never really gave proof that that was done. And we all know that the evaluations, Dave, were not performed for several years, correct?
Correct.
So even when the policy was written that says, here's a good practice, then the monitoring side of it failed and was not robust enough for it to actually make sure that that was done. So those are the kinds of things we need to go back and look at, I think.
Right, I'm wondering if we're talking about both administrative policies, those are the ones that weren't done for a number of years,
Aren't followed.
weren't followed. Okay, so,
So we're gonna start with the board policies and cases. We'll pull those and
right,
provide them for review.
great. Sound good? And we'll-
Yeah, I mean, I think that can, if you could just send us those, or we can look them up too, I think, but let's, yeah, that, before we even worry about what date we're talking about, let's all read them and see if that's something we wanna continue with, or there's a different model we wanna go.
That sounds-
Okay.
Sounds good.
The other big thing on this, I
And
have,
maybe I would say also, in addition to that, Katie, let's set 1 or 2 priorities instead of trying to do everything and say, hey, these are the ones we really want to work on and get right. And then go from there. Because otherwise, it's like 300 pages of policy.
well, because I was just gonna bring up the strategic plan, which, you know, isn't a lot of work either. We have under the strategic planning review, update strategic plan initiatives for 21-22. I still think we need to do this, to go back and, you know, actually move from the to-do list, in my view, what we had to actually having a strategic plan that's a more traditional one. So,
When we get to future items, why don't we?
well, no, but it's right here. It's
On the strategic plan.
Right,
Yeah.
for August, the second.
It's for the next meeting.
Second meeting in August, yeah.
So, and it talks about doing that once a month. I think that's great. We should be addressing the strategic plan on a monthly basis throughout the year, once we have one. So we need to get one. In the meantime, last year, we kind of used Dave's goals and objectives as our de facto short-term strategic plan, right? And I'm not sure we're planning on doing the same thing again this year. Makes sense.
We did a thought exchange and realized that critical thinking is probably the primary goal. And what we're gonna present in 2 weeks, we're gonna go after critical thinking and marry critical thinking as the overarching goal with your to-do list. There's 6 or 7 buckets of that, and then we'll merge that with the critical thinking as the overarching goal. And out of that, we'll create subcommittees that can develop the action plan, which gives you your strategic plan. Okay. Haven't forgotten. That's what's on here.
Okay, I don't know, it's on there as review.
I'm gonna review, we talked about it at the end of last year, and we're talking about it again tonight. And so I'm gonna show you the plan. And then, both you and Jonathan have a lot of experience around this, and Dwayne has a lot of tactical experience, and the other board members, and they can help guide the next steps. And I don't want to go too far down this path without some guidance from the board.
Of course.
And when you, we've all seen that critical thinking is that top priority, but when we get into that, can we talk, a number of people are wondering, can that include some memorization? Like,
So let's not go
Get into
there tonight, that's definitely something.
but just a definition of critical thinking when we get to it. is what
So
I'm
one
suggesting.
of the things that we've been working on is the whole notion of developing knowledge. And that was the knowledge gap book study that was led by Christy and Jill last year. And part of the reason the materials that were selected this year for language arts and for the math piece was that there's strong knowledge development pieces, right? So, there is a memorization piece that is baked into a lot of this work. So,
Great.
that's where you have to develop the knowledge so that you have to develop word recognition, so that you can read and think. Language is important, that's why we need to develop languages. To become a better writer, you develop a better vocabulary. As you develop a better vocabulary, you become a better writer. There's a certain reinforcing loop that occurs. So memorization is part of it.
No, just to have some general definition when we do get to it would be great.
So I have 2 more comments on this. So bond update should probably be on here. And see that specifically, there's budget and finance, but I think we just make it a line item, we're gonna be talking about it every month, we have different groups reporting in on it. I think it's important to track. We've been doing it every
Board meeting.
board meeting, pretty much, yeah. And then the other thing related to budget and finance with the FAB, we talked about the FAB presenting in a similar way that the DAC presents periodically. You know, it might still just be Linda, but it's kind of what that committee is doing and covering. It's a public committee, it needs to be public. So I don't know whether that is every other month or maybe depending on where the requirements are, reporting requirements and approval requirements that Linda has, and balancing that out, but I think we should put those in.
We'll discuss that with Linda and figure out sort of a good timing for that.
Yeah.
And we can make that into the budget and finance. Row.
That's it for me.
Jonathan, you're good?
Yeah, just ask Dave maybe,
Okay.
if you could get us a suggested list of your priorities, so maybe we could be able to discuss them then next week as well.
Yeah.
Of what you think are the key ones.
Are you saying next board meeting?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we get aligned around, I mean, getting both the board priorities and the superintendent priorities established as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Or aligned as quickly as possible, I mean, just to make sure we're on the same page very, at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think you've already written them. You've already.
I included some tentative goals in my report that I sent to the board a month or so ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
We can circle back to that and then make that part of the superintendent eval conversation.
Right. That's what makes sense, is to do this part.
So line that up, put that in there, and that'll keep us moving forward. And then that allows me to align the cabinet's goals with my goals.
Perfect. We solved everything. Yeah, good, Jonathan? Good,
Yeah, I just saw them at the end of the document. Okay, perfect.
great. 7.2 audit engagement contract. Move to approve audit engagement contract as presented. Everybody's had a chance to, any comments about it? Or should we just, everybody's had a chance to review it?
I just wanted to, Linda, what was the increase, or is it the same cost as the previous contract?
This is going to be a little more expensive than our previous auditors. I'm guessing, it's still not finalized yet, but probably around 15,000.
More.
More, okay.
They're already working on it,
That's correct.
so we've already agreed to this. I thought we already agreed.
Yeah, I just think it's I'm in full agreement that this is gonna be a better service. It's gonna give us more of what we need as a district and will improve both controls and transparency. I just think it's important to also be transparent that it's gonna cost us more. So that's it.
So what do we, I guess we can discuss all 3 items and then vote on all of them if we're.
I need an individual vote for 7.2 audit and 7.3 IGA.
Okay, so
Then
let's,
we can group section 8 together.
We don't put on 7.1.
No, that's just if we were gonna add another meeting.
great. So, can you call the vote for 7.2, please?
Sure, may I have someone move to approve the audit estimate or the audit engagement contract?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
And then I need a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement for the 2021 coordinated elections between Aspen School District and.
There's no questions on it,
No, I'm good.
I guess it only gets canceled if only 3 people, if only 3 people are running, then we can cancel the election, correct?
Correct, that's our choice, yes, to
Yeah.
cancel.
That's
How many people have checked out past packets just as a, Do we know?
We do, technically not allowed to have that as public information until everyone has returned their packets.
Oh, okay, so it's not public, the number of people, I mean, we're not asking for names, just number. Is that not public information?
Submit probably about 7 or 8.
Okay, so we think we'll get, based on that number, hopefully at least 3 people who get the signatures, I guess is what I was looking for.
I think it's clear there will be 3, whether there's 4 or 5 is more of the question, I think. I think that's a fair guess.
Okay, so if we only get 3, then no election and they just move forward. Okay,
All I have to say, Eliza, is we shouldn't give you a lot of stuff over the next 2 months. You got a lot of work to do. It's a 15-page document related to every single thing she has to do for the election.
So we are setting up some communication tomorrow, reminding everyone about this, and that packets are due on the 27th. So, and then by September 3rd, it'll be public information about who the candidates are.
okay, so anybody out there listening, please run.
Like I said,
Absolutely.
I need someone to move to approve that, and then a second.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
I think we're gonna have, next year we should set up rules about.
Girls first, boys first.
Yeah,
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and let's call the,
Do you call it roll?
we're all in favor, say
We have
aye.
to set all in favor.
aye,
Aye.
So
Did you say
consent,
that?
I said,
I
consent,
did just, yeah, on the consent action, I just have a quick question. It says in the ones we're approving to buy and sell real estate that the documentation has been presented to the board. I just didn't ever see that in any of our information in the contracts.
You're talking about import docs?
Well, just, I mean, I guess when I read the resolution, it says, it kind of reads as if we've already seen all the information and are approving this based on that information. And I'm kind of like, well, I guess we've never seen it. Right?
We see it 2 months ago. I mean, we haven't seen anything. We haven't gotten a contract recently, I don't think.
Have you, Susie, gotten a contract recently?
I'm signing contracts day and night.
We are closing on one real estate.
Yeah, but we have 2 here.
Two resolutions.
We
See,
do-
it says, look, the contract and any related documents as presented to the board prior to the adoption of this resolution are in all retrospects approved, authorized, and confirmed. I mean, it's saying there that they were presented to us, so I'm just wondering, did I miss it, or?
And I don't think we as board members, Susie may have seen it as board president. I haven't seen the real estate contracts. I've only seen the resolution to approve the contract that I haven't seen. So.
In the past, you haven't seen any contracts, just.
Well, unless we saw them in like June,
Uh-huh.
but I haven't seen anything, I don't think I've gotten anything in the last couple weeks, so. I mean, there were definitely some old ones
Mhm.
that I assume happened or didn't, or done. Yeah, but I don't think these 2 resolutions, I'm not sure we've seen the contracts.
I don't think historically we ever shared the contracts with the whole board. I think it was just the president and the secretary who would sign. So, I mean, we could discuss sharing those things. with
Well,
the
so
whole board.
here's what I don't know that I think I should know before I go into this resolution. I don't know how much money we're spending, and I don't know how many units we're getting. I have no idea what this is for. So it's hard, and I don't wanna hold anything up, but it's really hard to say, yes, I approve to do this when it could be it could be anything. I have no idea what it is from what's available here.
So we need more detail in the attachments at these meetings.
I think earlier, we had some sort of detail last spring that told us what we were buying.
Mhm.
This doesn't tell us anything here, somehow that got missed.
So should we add that back in for the next meeting but we
Yeah.
want to pass on it, we want to approve it.
We do
Right.
want to.
We want to approve it tonight, so Dave, what should we do? in your humble opinion?
Well,
Does anyone have the contracts? We could forward on to the board.
I have, I have.
We put them on the board docs now, and we can,
I don't,
I have it in my computer.
I don't
I
have.
have a piece of it right here.
or look to see what you gave us in the spring, where we got some date, some information on what it was, other than just an address.
So I typically would just give you the resolution. I have never forwarded the board any contracts.
Somebody spoke to it before then. Somebody spoke to something. This is the first time I haven't seen.
Yeah,
And again, it was a couple months ago, so I don't remember
I
exactly
think
what it
like,
was.
Maybe if Dave wants to tell us the details tonight, if Linda has them printed.
sure, I mean, I've got sort of a cover sheet that we can provide in the future moving forward and for members of the board here. This is actually a unit that I even visited. It's a pretty phenomenal opportunity in Snowmass. It's a one-bedroom condominium, very desirable, priced, final price of $445,000. And it's actually just a real nice addition to the portfolio. So we've been able to acquire through a couple of projects and have in the pipeline a number of 2 and 3 bedroom units, which the board approved and provided you with more information. Apologies for not providing this, but what we could provide, this is called a purchaser's statement of settlement. And I would recommend that we begin including those in the board docs moving forward.
But it doesn't have to be the public part, right? If it's.
Sorry?
It doesn't have to be the public part of it, if it's confidential information, we
And
can.
it does need to be confidential until closing.
Okay,
So it can be in the board view only section of board docs. And we'll make sure that any acquisitions will have the purchaser's statement of settlement. And to Jonathan's earlier point about the project doc, you'll see as we develop that, and I'm meeting with Mr. Daniels and Mr. Spar tomorrow, no, Thursday, all afternoon, to work out these details.
perfect, yeah, that's helpful. And maybe it wasn't one of those places or something before.
Well, this is probably just an oversight. You know, we have, so you said there's been a number of real estate projects moving forward. The amount of documentation in Colorado was, it's deep. It's deep. It's deeper than the Roaring Fork.
I'm probably signing 2 a day for all the paperwork, you know, all the disclaimers and
Yeah, no.
lots of changes, lots of.
I don't think either Jonathan or I are suggesting we get everybody get involved in that, but just more than, yeah, we have to provide something that a contractor we haven't seen, you know, it's hard to approve something we haven't seen.
Sure. Yeah, we will add that into.
Yeah.
Do you want to mention the Rio Grande information?
That's the second one.
Yeah, since we have that on tonight's consent agenda.
Sure.
Very similar.
Just high level, I mean, you don't need to give us the exact price of public meeting and everything.
Or is that the wrong, is that not the document you're looking for? Yeah, that has the price and it has the location, but maybe it's the.
And in fairness, this one that I just had today, I just received right before coming to this meeting.
Because I had just signed the document.
Because I have to set up a wire to pay for it, I need at least 2 days notice.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, so that's why.
So, yeah, so this is a second single bedroom condominium in downtown Aspen. Looks like the
415 Rio Grande.
Yeah,
It's over my place, right?
sorry. Yeah, it's over in that area, down there in the new city hall. Looks like final, with all the fees bundled in would be $889,000. Quite a bit more than they asked. Okay, yeah, so it's 2 one-bedroom condominiums we're hoping to acquire. As we said earlier, one with new teachers. And these are very much part of our recruiting strategies and needs.
And they fit into the overall portfolio as reviewed by our consultants that are helping us figure this out. And they agree, I assume, that it is a appropriate acquisition and a fair deal for us.
They do.
And it does take a little bit of time too, because we do get that, also involved our attorney looking through all this stuff.
On every single property.
He's a real estate attorney too?
Yeah, he writes these resolutions.
I think he has somebody on staff.
Well, resolutions, yeah, but actual contracts.
Oh, contracts?
I think there's someone else.
Yeah, they have another real estate attorney.
Okay. All right, I'm comfortable with that amount of information. You, Jonathan?
Yeah, I am as well. Maybe a good practice, Katie, I think it would be great if we get the language that you just discussed in into here, since we hired we did hire these guys and that is their role. And so if we just put a little something in there saying it, and it fits into the approved housing portfolio and has been reviewed by our and was priorly reviewed by the, I don't know if we want to say the housing committee or whatever. And then that'll just make all that stuff clear and make sure everybody dots their i's and crosses their t's as well.
And maybe there's some kind of form you can give us going forward, whether it's that document or whether it's some smaller version. It doesn't matter, we just need enough to know that we're not doing something silly.
Right, so
Yeah.
you can create a form that articulates the purchase price, the unit, the number of bedrooms, and the final closing cost. But I think that would be a standard template that we could share with the housing committee as well as our.
Yeah, I think this would be a good discussion that we can have on some details.
Yeah, and in the context of the whole thing that Dave's doing on Thursday, I think you said, where you're putting the whole portfolio together. And then also the one thing I would add to that is, since we're not reviewing the full contracts, not that I want to review the full contracts, but any unusual or different non-standard terms in the contract that come up. Typically not, I mean, the Colorado real estate contracts are pretty standard, but occasionally there are some things that get put in there that are not standard. So if there's anything super out of the ordinary that we need to know about before we agree on a resolution to enter the contract, we should probably know if there's something out of the ordinary.
We'll work with Bob Daniels around sort of a checklist of things. And sometimes water rights are involved. There's a couple of things that.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll try to put something together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
I actually like the idea of a form of a checklist, a single page per unit. That is quickly and readily reviewed.
I assume we have a few more of these coming. We're still counting?
A lot.
Yeah, so, right, so it's work.
Dave Bob, fifth grade school teacher in real estate. So real estate developer.
That's what you're gonna do when you're retired in 6 years?
Well, I'm driving the bus and skiing, I go to some properties, so.
Okay. All right, well then I move, unless there's any more discussion, I move to approve all of the items in agenda item 8.1, 8.2. Thank you for the donation. Just wanted to give the shout out to that as well. And there we go. Do we need do we review 8.4? Questions?
Needs to be pointed out in any quick, there's a lot of names here.
Personnel,
These were all just what was updated since June 11th until last Friday. So we just pulled the entire list. So there may be names that you saw that people that were rolling off at the end of their contract at 6:30 that you may have seen before, but this is just the complete list from.
and I do want to say, before we vote, to welcome to all these new people in new positions to our big family and to the retirees. I know we said thank you very much to them before, but I would like to thank them for many years and huge thanks for decades of service. But now I think we had a motion.
And so, yeah, a motion, and thank you to Futures Funds as well
Yeah.
for the donation. I already said that, I think maybe. And so I move to pass all of those.
And I'll-
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Future agenda items, 9.1, we will add the CASB board policies to look at. And we will be discussing Dave's goals, our goals, and strategic plan. Anything else? Should we remove from these bullet points some that you want to go through that on your own, or you want us to go through those with you now?
Yeah, I mean, I pulled these from our June 11th meeting.
So why don't we remove, it looks like we've kind of pivoted towards Bill De La Cruz, maybe away from Ann Delahunt, is that fair to say?
Seems reasonable.
Okay, so maybe take that off. And I think we can take off the BSR policies, because that's baked into the new GP8E document policy. Do you agree?
Yes.
That if that's baked in,
Sure.
it's already baked into the calendar? Katie, had you asked about tracking of action items, or was that you, Jonathan?
That was Jonathan.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I think that I still am a little, I guess, I think we still have an opportunity for improvement, I guess, here. And I didn't check, hold on, let me see, let me just go back to the notes and see, or the last thing. You know, I think it still gets lost to me sometimes, I guess, when we have action items. If it really came away as a clear action item from these meetings, and then what the follow-up action was. So I think we still miss that in our governance process. I just guess we really haven't found out a good way to fix it just quite yet.
Can you explain what your concern again is? I don't quite understand.
Well, I think what we talk about a lot of things in these meetings, and sometimes, you know, we've talked about, it's not clear, is there an action item that was registered? And then is there a clear follow-up? Sometimes Dave writes it down and then it gets done, and we're not tracking it, I guess. And then sometimes it might be missed. Somebody thinks there's an action item, and then there's really not. Nothing happens. So I guess that's my.
Do you have an example? One example?
What we just said about the resolutions as an example. So there was a clear action item that, at least from my understanding, that we asked Dave to come up with a checklist or make some changes to the real estate resolutions. That I guess won't be tracked until it comes up again the next time. And I guess that's just kind of a weakness I see in our governance process, because there's no clear list of action items that comes out of the meeting. So.
Well, and maybe it's a different process for meeting notes. You know, we're keeping track of notes, they become public information. We don't review them until they get posted on board docs a couple days prior to the next board meeting. Maybe if we instead expedited that to a day or two, however long it would take, a day or two after the board meeting, with a very clear list at the bottom of, these are the to-dos that were the action items, as you were saying.
Yeah.
And then we have it, it's articulated.
Well, last year we added late in the year, the board updates, or the board.
So I have to write a board update to the staff.
Right, we do a board update, but in there, maybe we could put action items from the board meeting.
That's a great idea.
And then it becomes a public facing document with action items.
The board briefs.
The board brief, that's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then all it is it's a list. I hate to say it's gonna look a little like a laundry list. There's gonna be big items and little items in there, right? You know, they're not all equal in terms of effort and follow through. But perhaps that becomes something that gets, if it doesn't get reviewed in a presentation during a meeting, you know, we're looking at that with a to-do date on it as part of our agenda. I mean, that's a way to make sure we're following up on it, is making an agenda item.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the board briefs are really more for the school community at large and not so much for board. That's what you were thinking too. So,
Generally, they're geared towards staff. I don't
yeah, they're geared
include all the
towards
nitty gritty of everything that we have to discuss, but
Yeah, I just think it's, what are getting clarity around what Dave took away, if anything, from these meetings that he has action items, or if we have action items. So if we agreed to something, you know, whatever, we were gonna all think about our strategic priorities for this year or whatever, and that we would come back to that.
Okay, if it's at a high level in the board briefs, or do you want it more? Should we start with that? To
Yeah.
put these superintendent actions that we've either recommended or requested in the board briefs? Do you
Well,
know?
I mean, the only other thing I was gonna say, good meeting management would argue that we would do it at the end of the board meeting every time. Not, 2 weeks later, not even 2 days later, but at the end of the meeting, we would have an agreement, okay, these are the action items that someone has been writing down, hopefully one person consistently.
Yep.
Writing down, and these are the expectations, and make sure that we're clear on what the expectation is for that in terms of timing and accountability.
I like that.
Agreed.
I mean,
We could add it as a last discussion item, so you can capture what we just discussed maybe. And then assign them as needed, and then also, I would like to maybe put them in and review them again, go through all of them and say that was completed, this is still ongoing with our progress on it. But Katie, I do like your suggestion, kind of recapping as a group at the end of each meeting, what we need to work on for next time, so everyone's clear.
yeah, and some of them have really long time horizons,
Yeah.
that's okay. But some of them are gonna be really minor little things. But I mean, I think that, Eliza, you're taking the notes, I would, if it's not, I know you got a lot coming on with the election. I think that would be a great thing for you to track as we're going through the meeting, and we can review at the end. It shouldn't take very long.
So before the debrief, would you both say? Before our debrief? Okay.
Yeah,
Add another 5-minute agenda item.
yeah.
You look concerned. No?
I'm just trying to figure it out. I've never sat on a for-profit board, so how do for-profit boards do it?
Well, I'm thinking more of a management meeting, and my thoughts, which is you sit down, you go over a bunch of stuff over a 2-hour meeting, and then at the end of the meeting, you summarize, okay, this is what everyone's doing, this is the responsibilities, the action, who's gonna cover it.
What's the last one?
Yeah, the example in my boards, Dave, is they just put it as a follow-up item, and it's clearly called out by a bullet point, and then we track those and get back and make sure they get checked off the list. So,
Fair enough.
there.
We'll add that to the debrief from going forward. Okay, great. But meantime, so I guess we can take that bullet point and move it down to the.
Agreed.
Action items to track the action items.
Okay, translation services, I've been seeing some translation services today for the first time in our board. Do we feel that is taken care of, or is it work in progress?
Translation work in the district, nothing forward facing goes out without translation. So I feel like we do a lot more than many districts. So I feel pretty good about that.
I think that was related to, this bullet point though was related to translating board meetings. It wasn't, that's where this came from, I believe. The concept of having a board meeting translated afterwards, and what wasn't clear was whether there had been any research on whether there's a demand or need for that. Or not, but I think it's not just general translation services like you're talking about, David. I think it was like specific to board meetings.
Yeah, it was brought up to the equity committee to do the translation, and they're on board, and they haven't met in the beginning of the year, so their next meeting, I'll make sure I put that back on as a point to kind of discuss, and maybe reach out to other schools like Orangeburg and see their best practices for their. Oh yeah, we'll reach out to Orangeburg to see their best practices, because they have a translation line.
And do we know if there has been a demand?
I can speak to that from the high school if you'd like.
Please.
I know that the parents don't attend meetings because they have actually said they won't understand anything. So if we were to advertise that there was either a channel where someone's translating in real time, which is really easy via Zoom, or that's actually, you have to have a translator and all anyone does is opt into the other channel. But yes, our parent community has said they don't attend
About
meetings.
approximately,
I feel like we had, we have many families listed in Power School with Spanish as the language spoken at home. In terms of the last meeting we had for Noche Latina, I think we probably had 12 to 15 different families there, so.
and you have heard that they would like to attend the board meetings if they could understand.
They haven't said board meetings specifically, but they have said all meetings, school district wide, they do not attend them because they know that there will not be Spanish.
Well, I mean, I think that's, I'm not sure whether the board meetings are the first place to start on this or not. I mean, I think that's, I hate to ask for a survey, but I mean, I think we need to figure out how to start and not just.
Well, that's why we've had the Noche Latina that are fully in Spanish, and we've had all of our registration meetings with the Spanish channel. We work really hand in hand with AFC, so certainly that might be I wouldn't do a survey, but I think we could talk to AFC and say, would the community like to have a Spanish channel on board meetings? That would probably be the easiest way to do that.
That'd be great. And
But just a recommendation would be also to look maybe at the needs of the community and then see if this is the best place to invest. I mean, at the end of the day, we would be investing, I just use $100 an hour times 3 hours every board meeting, times 2 board meetings a month. All of a sudden we've just invested $15,000 in translation. Is that the most important place for us to help out this community with $15,000? So maybe that would be good to at least do that check and see where can our money have the biggest impact and the biggest benefit to the community. And then if it's translation services, then that's what it is, but maybe we should ask them.
Well, and I would suggest that we look at the meetings we have district-wide with parents and look at the numbers of people we have attending those meetings now and maybe focus on the ones that are, more people want to attend. I mean, what do we have, 30 people on the board meeting right now?
18.
18? Yeah, I'm sure you guys in your meetings with the parent community in the middle school and the high school probably are getting a lot more people. I hope we're getting a lot more people with that, which would imply a bigger demand, which would imply more important for translation
Let's ask
services
Dave.
to start.
Let's ask Dave.
Well, I mean, I think these are really valid points, right? And, of the 14 people at the board meeting, most of them are staff. So, I think what we should do is talk with Aspen Family Connections and we'll reboot that conversation. And to Jonathan's point, I would be concerned about spending $15,000 on translating board meetings that people aren't going to watch in English or in Spanish. So, I mean, and I would far rather have our families engaging robustly in the schoolhouse than in the boardroom. I mean, and I'm not trying to say don't come to the boardroom. Certainly welcome. And if there is a need, then we'll figure out how to pay for it. Absolutely. But, I think we can start there.
It's just just look to develop a high impact plan and then invest in that plan. And if translating the board meetings is what the community says is there will be a very good benefit to them, then let's do it. I mean, but it's hard for us to say what's the best for the community if we haven't even asked them, in my personal opinion.
Do you think a month to hear back from Aspen Family Connections is too soon? How soon do you think we could get an answer? We might be able to get an answer on this.
So from an action perspective, I'd like to say within 4 to 6 weeks, we could have a good answer.
Great.
I think Tara had her hand raised.
Yes, Tara.
Hi,
Tara.
guys.
Hi, please,
Tara.
speak, Tara.
So I've been, thank you for letting me speak. And I'm one of the new co-directors of student services along with Lauren, who's in this meeting. But one of the things that, I've been a part of this district for the last 11 years in multiple roles. And one of the things I'm very passionate about is supporting every community member and every family. And translation is critical. And I don't know if we need to have a translator here at this meeting, but I do think if we could take this meeting and translate it and have like that document translated so people could read it so that they could understand would be maybe something that we could consider as well, without like having somebody there today live, for example.
When you say,
I do know that we would get a lot more people involved if we did translate. There is a lot of people that we're missing. I'm just going to put that out there. And I want them to be involved and I want their voices to be heard. And so I think we can think of some out of the box ways that we can get them involved without spending a ton of money, but also like involving them as well. So I want us to consider as a district that there is this community that's wonderful and beautiful, and to include their voices, maybe not using resources, but also considering additional resources that we might have. So that's just an advocacy that I, as a student services director, as well as a parent, as well as a previous teacher in this district, that have worked with multiple people of multiple languages, not just Spanish, but French, and I mean, we have so many people that speak so many different languages as a community, and it's amazing. So I just want to make sure that we are supportive to them. So I think if we could agree to think about some out of the box thinking to support translation, we could get the biggest support from every community member, is what I'm trying to say, if that makes any sense.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. When you say that document, are you talking about board briefs? Are you talking about, because that's already, is that already translated to?
Well, I'm thinking like even meetings, like you can take these meetings and you can take the closed captioning and actually change them into different languages. And we can actually take the closed captioning, even if they don't see the videos, and change them into different languages. I've done that as a teacher, and I've done that for different parents. In my teaching career, you can change them into different languages. So there's a lot of different ways that we can use our tech department to support us. And, you know, even though we're all speaking English right now, we can take the closed captioning and capture that and then translate the closed captioning. That's kind of what I'm saying. It's like there's easy ways to take our conversation today and then put them into different languages based on our demographics. If that answers your question, Susie.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out, Dave confirmed that our board briefs, which, you know, not everybody reads, but it is sent out to the whole school community. No, it's sent out to.
It's specific to staff.
Oh.
Because.
So could we start, because?
Well, because we don't approve the board meeting minutes until the next meeting, and I don't want to publish anything to the community that may have not been approved by you guys.
Got it.
That's why we do the high level overview in board briefs, and then in the board meeting minutes, there's a little bit more detail.
Got it. But the board briefs are translated into Spanish, but they don't reach that many people. It's staff.
Around 300 or so.
Okay, well, Dave says he will get back to us within 4 to 6 weeks about this. Thank you very much for your input, and we're glad.
Yes, of course. And I'm just here as an advocate, so thank you for letting me speak.
Great. Okay, just maybe we should just skip the next couple of ones and do that, the next couple of bullets at the next meeting. I think that took up, we did 4, we have 3 more to do. Equity outreach and feedback, there was GB2 board positions. I wasn't sure what that was about. Do you know, Eliza, what the GP2 board positions was about?
I think not.
Does any, Jonathan or Katie, did either of you bring it up? Okay, so I think we should just maybe discuss the last 3 when all 5 board meeting members are here. So I think we've taken off the first 4 bullet points.
Well, not just the end, it's changed to build out the crews. We're still doing the same work, or some of the same work.
Yep, okay. So we're up to 10, debrief, and it's Katie Frisch's turn to debrief, even though it's spelled Katie Frisch.
I know, I was gonna, you know what, you just stole my thunder. I was gonna give Eliza a really hard time about spelling my name wrong twice.
Oh, thanks.
it's great to be back. So, you know, I'll keep this as brief as possible, but I just think that even though we didn't have everybody here, it's, you know, wonderful to see a lot of people in the room, and I think we got a pretty good update, starting with AEA, Public Health, the bond, each of the principals, our superintendent. And I am looking forward to a hopefully less stressful year for everybody than last year was. I think this board meeting last year was very different than this year. So, yeah, I think that was a 4-hour long meeting, so good job keeping up on topics, and I think we are slowly getting back in the game from a board perspective after a 2-month hiatus, so.
Thank you. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Thank you, everyone.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody. Have a good evening.
Everybody in the room, and see you with all of